Yeah, many thousands of men did that work. And they were proud of the work they did. And they had their heroes too. Though most will remain nameless forever, one of them lives on. And his name is John Henry. The story of John Henry is said to be based on actual events that happened at the Big Bend Tunnel in Summers County, West Virginia, sometime between 1870 and 1872. A steam drill was being brought in to replace workers. And John Henry was chosen to go against the steam drill in the classic battle of man versus machine. But I guess I shouldn't tell you the story. I should just sing it. When John Henry was a little baby, sitting on his mammy's knee, picked up a hammer and a little piece of steel. Say, hammer be the death of me. Say, hammer be the death of me. Well, early in the morning, when the bluebird began to sing, you can see John Henry out on the line. You can listen to his voice. Listen to John Henry's hymn. Well, the captain said to John Henry, gonna bring that steam drill round. I'm gonna bring that steam drill out on the job. I'm gonna whoop that steel down. Whoop that steel down. Well, John Henry said to the captain, man ain't nothing but a man. But before I let that steam drill beat me down, I'm gonna die with my hammer in my hand, Lord. I'm gonna die with my hammer in my hand. And John Henry said to the captain, bring that 30-pound hammer round. 30-pound hammer and a 9-foot handle. Gonna beat your steam drill down. Beat your steam drill down. John Henry said to his shaker, shaker, why don't you pray? 'Cause if I miss this little piece of steel, tomorrow you'll bury me. Tomorrow you'll bury me. Well, John Henry drove 15 feet. Steam drill drove but 9. But he hammered so hard that his poor heart, and he lay down his hammer and he died. He lay down his hammer and he died. And they took John Henry to the graveyard. And they buried him in the sand. And every locomotive that comes roaring by says, yonder lies a steel driving man, Lord, Lord, yonder lies a steel driving man. And so the railroads got built and the whole world changed. People who had never been more than a day's walk from their home got a chance to go places they'd never even heard of before. News from distant places traveled faster. As more and more miles of track were laid, little tiny towns in the middle of nowhere were no longer so remote. And new towns grew up in remote regions as the trains went by. It took a lot of people to run a railroad. Firemen, brakemen, switchmen, conductors, mechanics, baggagemen, conductors, station masters, and of course, engineers. And the engineers became the most admired, most romantic figure on the railroad. These brand new giant machines were technological marvels for people who'd never seen a machine more complicated than a plow. And they traveled at unbelievable speeds. Why, early passengers were astonished to find trains exceeding 15 miles an hour. Alarmists expressed fears that the human body could not withstand such velocities. Some men took out pencil and paper to write coherent sentences to prove that the brain could function at speeds up to 20 miles an hour. And before long, trains were going 40, 50 miles an hour. Now that might not seem like much to sophisticated folks like you here, but to people in horse and buggy days, that was meteoric. And the men who drove these giant, surging, frightening machines became heroic figures. Little boys who used to dream about growing up to be riverboat captains started dreaming about growing up to be engineers. And so it wasn't long before certain engineers became famous and immortalized in song. And the most famous, most archetype engineer of them all is, of course, Casey Jones. Yes, that's right. Go ahead and say it. That's okay. Yes, right. Now, Casey Jones was a real man, and he first became famous from a train wreck that he was in, and the song was written about that. And there are a lot of variations of this song about Casey Jones, but in every one of them, Casey Jones dies, which is real depressing, I have found. And so tonight I thought today, whatever time of day this is, I thought I would do a song for you, a version of the song in which he doesn't die. Okay, that sounds good. All right. So we're going to do one, and this is one of the versions of the famous story of Casey Jones. Once I get this, okay. Yeah, okay. The orthodontist said I should have this off in about 300 payments. Anyway, okay, all right. Casey Jones was a mighty man. Now he's resting in the promised land. Wait a minute, he dies in this one too. All right, well, I'm sorry about that. All right, we'll just go on. The only kind of music he could understand was an 8-wheel driver under his command. Hold that thought. He made the freight train boogie all the time. He made the freight train boogie and he rolled down the line. When the fireman started ringing the bell, everybody up and down the line could tell Casey Jones was coming to town on a 6-8-wheeler that was burning the ground. He made the freight train boogie all the time. Well, yeah. He made the freight train boogie and he rolled down the line. Sound like this. Well, he woke up the people up and down the line. Lord, how they make the well so wine. He told that fireman better hold the sheet. I'm gonna make this ride with the buggy beat. He made the freight train boogie all the time. He made the freight train boogie and he rolled down the line. It sound like this. Going off in the distance.